Hello friends, welcome to my channel CHEETO Club. Deep within the heart of the whispering woods, where the ancient trees creaked and groaned with an otherworldly voice, stood the infamous Hunter Cottage. The once quaint dwelling had become a cautionary tale, a haunted monument to the unspeakable horrors that lurked within its crumbling walls. The story began on a chilly autumn evening in 1850, when the Hunter family arrived at the cottage, eager to start their new life. The family consisted of John, a former soldier, his wife, Emily, and their two children, James and Elizabeth. The cottage, nestled near the woods, seemed like the perfect retreat from the chaos of city life. However, the family's tranquility was short-lived. Strange occurrences began to plague them, starting with small, seemingly insignificant events. Doors creaked open and shut on their own, and the sound of whispers seemed to emanate from the walls. At first, the family dismissed these incidents as the result of an old settling house. But as time passed, the events grew more frequent and more intense. Emily would find her kitchen utensils rearranged, and James would wake up in the middle of the night to find his toys scattered across the floor. Elizabeth, the youngest, began to act strangely, as if she was being influenced by some malevolent force. She would often be found talking to an invisible presence, her eyes black as coal. John, determined to protect his family, began to investigate the strange happenings. He scoured the woods, searching for any signs of intruders or supernatural entities. But the more he delved into the mystery, the more he became convinced that the source of the horror was not from without, but from within the cottage itself. One fateful night, John discovered a hidden room deep within the cottage's cellar. The room was small, with walls adorned with strange symbols and artifacts. In the center of the room, John found a large leather-bound book. As he opened the book, he was met with an unholy stench, and the words on the pages seemed to shift and writhe like living serpents. John realized too late that the book was a cursed tome, one that held the secrets of dark magic and ancient deities. The family's presence in the cottage had awakened a malevolent force, one that had lain dormant for centuries. As John read the words on the pages, he felt his mind begin to unravel. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse with a dark energy, and the air grew thick with an otherworldly presence. John knew that he had to destroy the book, but it was too late. The darkness had already consumed him. The next morning, Emily awoke to find John missing. She searched the cottage, but there was no sign of him. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The children too seemed different, their eyes black as coal, their smiles twisted and sinister. As the days passed, Emily realized that her family was no longer hers. They had been consumed by the darkness, and she was the only one left to fight. She knew that she had to escape the cottage, but the doors were sealed and the windows refused to budge. Emily was trapped, and the darkness closed in around her. She heard the sound of whispers, the creaking of the wooden floorboards, and the rustling of leaves outside. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and the air grew thick with an unholy presence. And then there was silence. The next morning, the villagers found Emily's carriage, abandoned on the outskirts of the woods. The horses were dead, their eyes frozen in terror. The cottage too was quiet, the windows boarded up, and the door sealed with a large iron padlock. The villagers whispered among themselves, sharing stories of the Hunter family's disappearance. Some said that they had been consumed by the darkness, while others claimed that they had been driven mad by the cursed tome. The legend of Hunter Cottage spread far and wide, a cautionary tale about the dangers of meddling with forces beyond human understanding. The cottage remained abandoned, a haunted monument to the horrors that lurked within its crumbling walls. Years went by and the legend grew. People claimed to have seen the ghostly apparitions of the Hunter family wandering the woods, their eyes black as coal. Others spoke of hearing strange noises, the creaking of the wooden floorboards, and the rustling of leaves outside. And then, one stormy night, a group of brave adventurers decided to explore the abandoned cottage. They approached the dwelling with caution, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. As they entered the cottage, they were met with an unholy stench, and the air grew thick with an otherworldly presence. They explored the cottage, their footsteps echoing off the walls. Every step creaked with an eerie screech, as if the old wooden floorboards were protesting their presence. The group began to feel a creeping sense of unease, as if they were being watched by unseen eyes. As they ventured deeper into the cottage, they stumbled upon the hidden room in the cellar. The walls were still adorned with the strange symbols, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. In the center of the room, they found the cursed tome, its leather cover creaking with an otherworldly energy. One of the adventurers, a young woman named Sarah, felt an inexplicable pull towards the book. She reached out a trembling hand, and as she touched the cover, the room was filled with a blinding flash of light. When the light faded, the group found themselves back in the main room of the cottage. But something was different. The air was colder, the shadows deeper, and the silence more oppressive. As they turned to leave, they heard a faint whispering in their ears. It was a soft, raspy voice, and it seemed to be coming from all around them. "Get out while you still can," the voice whispered. "This is not a place for the living." The group spun around, trying to locate the source of the voice, but there was no one in sight. The whispering grew louder, more urgent, and the group knew they had to escape. They turned to flee, but the doors were sealed shut. The windows refused to budge. They were trapped. As the whispering grew to a deafening crescendo, the group realized that they were not alone in the cottage. The Hunter family was still there, their spirits trapped by the cursed tome. The group was consumed by a creeping sense of dread as they realized that they were about to become the latest victims of Hunter Cottage's dark and sinister history. And then, the lights went out. The group was plunged into darkness. The only sound the creaking of the old wooden floorboards and the distant whispering of the damned. As they stumbled through the darkness, desperate to escape, they knew that they were being herded towards some unspeakable horror. And then there was silence. The next morning, the villagers found the group's abandoned cars parked outside the cottage. The engines were still running, the headlights still shining, but there was no sign of the group. The villagers whispered among themselves, sharing stories of the group's disappearance. Some said that they had been consumed by the darkness, while others claimed that they had been driven mad by the cursed tome. The Legend of Hunter Cottage grew, a cautionary tale about the dangers of meddling with forces beyond human understanding. And the cottage remained, standing sentinel over the whispering woods, waiting for its next victims. Years went by, and the legend grew. People claimed to have seen the ghostly apparitions of the Hunter family wandering the woods, their eyes black as coal. Others spoke of hearing strange noises, the creaking of the wooden floorboards and the rustling of leaves outside. And then, one stormy night, a lone traveler stumbled upon the cottage. He was a brave soul, determined to explore the abandoned dwelling. As he approached the cottage, he felt a creeping sense of unease. The wind howled through the trees, and the branches creaked with an otherworldly energy. He pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the silence was oppressive. As he ventured deeper into the cottage, he stumbled upon the hidden room in the cellar. The walls were still adorned with the strange symbols, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. In the center of the room, he found the cursed tome, its leather cover creaking with an otherworldly energy. As he reached out to touch the book, the lights went out. The traveler was plunged into darkness. The only sound, the creaking of the old wooden floorboards and the distant whispering of the damned. And then there was silence. The next morning, the villagers found the traveler's abandoned car parked outside the cottage. The engine was still running, the headlights still shining. But there was no sign of the traveler. The villagers whispered among themselves, sharing stories of the traveler's disappearance. Some said that he had been consumed by the darkness, while others claimed that he had been driven mad by the cursed tome. The Legend of Hunter Cottage grew, a cautionary tale about the dangers of meddling with forces beyond human understanding. And the cottage remained, standing sentinel over the whispering woods, waiting for its next victim. The story of Hunter Cottage became a legend, a myth that was passed down through generations. People whispered about the cursed tome, the haunted cottage, and the unspeakable horrors that lurked within its walls. But the legend lived on, a reminder of a state of frenzied terror, convinced that the entities were closing in on them. As the madness consumed them, they began to turn on each other. Accusations flew, and the group descended into chaos. In the midst of the mayhem, they stumbled upon a hidden room deep within the cottage. Inside, they found evidence of Malcolm's twisted experiments, including ancient artifacts, strange symbols, and a series of disturbing photographs. The images depicted the Hunter family's descent into madness, their bodies contorted in unnatural positions, their eyes black as coal. The group realized that they had unleashed a malevolent force, one that had been dormant for decades. As they gazed upon the photographs, They felt the presence closing in around them, its icy breath whispering in their ears. One by one, the group members vanished, dragged screaming into the darkness. The last one standing, Emily, stumbled upon an ancient ritual scrawled on the walls of the hidden room. The ritual was a desperate attempt to banish the malevolent force back to the depths of hell. With shaking hands, Emily began to recite the incantation, hoping against hope that it would work. As she spoke the words, the air around her seemed to thicken, the presence coalescing into a tangible form. The entity loomed before her, its eyes blazing with an otherworldly fury. Emily stood frozen, her voice trapped in her throat. The entity began to laugh, a sound that was both ancient and evil. And then everything went black. The next morning, the police found Emily's car parked outside the Hunter Cottage. But she was never seen again. The cottage remained standing, a testament to the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. The locals whispered of the cursed place, how it had claimed another victim, and how the malevolent force still lurked, waiting for its next prey. The Hunter Cottage remained abandoned, a haunted monument to the horrors that had transpired within its walls. But the legend lived on, passed down through generations. A cautionary tale about the dangers of meddling with forces beyond human understanding. Years went by, and the Hunter Cottage became a local legend, a ghost story told around campfires to scare children into behaving. But the truth was far more sinister. People who dared to venture near the cottage reported strange occurrences, unexplained noises, disembodied voices, and an unsettling feeling of being watched. Some brave souls attempted to explore the cottage, but none returned to tell the tale. One stormy night, a group of teenagers decided to explore the infamous cottage. They approached the entrance, laughing and joking, but their merriment was short-lived. As they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them, and they were plunged into darkness. The group frantically searched for a way out, but every door led to more rooms, more corridors, and more terrors. One by one, the teenagers vanished, never to be seen again. The last one remaining, a girl named Sarah, stumbled upon the hidden room where Emily had discovered the ancient ritual. Sarah found the same photographs, the same symbols, and the same feeling of dread. She realized that she was trapped in a nightmare from which she might never awaken. As she desperately searched for a way out, Sarah heard the sound of footsteps, heavy and deliberate, coming from the floor above. The entity had found her. With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah sprinted out of the room, down the corridor and through the front door, which swung open with an otherworldly creak. She emerged into the stormy night, gasping for air, and stumbled down the path, not stopping until she reached the safety of her car. Breathless and shaken, Sarah drove away from the Hunter Cottage, vowing never to return. But as she glanced in the rearview mirror, she saw the cottage looming in the darkness, its windows glowing with an eerie light. The entity watched her leave, its presence lingering in the shadows, waiting for the next victim to stumble into its clutches. The Hunter Cottage remained standing, a monolith to horror, a testament to the darkness that lurked within its walls. And the legend grew, passed down through generations. A cautionary tale about the dangers of meddling with forces beyond human understanding. But the truth was far more sinister. The Hunter Cottage was a doorway to hell, and those who dared to enter would never return. The story of the Hunter Cottage became a myth, a ghost story told to frighten children into behaving. But the truth was far more terrifying. The cottage remained standing, a haunted monument to the horrors that had transpired within its walls. And if you listen closely on certain stormy nights, you can still hear the screams of those who dared to enter the Hunter Cottage, forever trapped in a living nightmare of terror and despair.